folks. This is Acid Root. So I'm going to review the second album by the electronic Colorado duo Breathe Carolina. Now, this group is a blend of electronic music and rock music. So I would kind of map them out as like a screamo version and electronic version. They're kind of like Broken Side, just in an electronic sense, a more focus on electronic type music. They've got a touch and a taste of Blood on the Dance Floor in there, and then they also have bits of like Sum 41. They kind of have some of that punk image, like Papa Roach and Sum 41. And they're basically electronic punk in a lot of ways that has some screamo vocals that really works out well. So it's kind of like electronic crunk core with a little bit of hardcore or post-hardcore kind of thrown in. So it's a good combination. I definitely like this blend of music pretty damn well, and it was surprising and original because it also gives off vibes of LMFAO, 303, David Guetta, Pitbull, that type stuff. So it has a lot of good vibes. It made sense that this record came out in 2009 just because it had a lot of similar vibes to some of the club hits that were around that time. The Kesha stuff and the Flo Rida stuff and the Pitbull stuff and that type stuff that was kind of going on with it. I really feel like, this really was kind of underappreciated. None of the singles from this project really charted, but it really has some pretty jivey dance numbers on here and some easy music to kind of bop to, kick back to, jive to, dance to, flirt to, move out to, drive to, all different situations just for going out. This is really kind of an underground album. I feel like this, despite the fact that they broke even on their next album, their 2011 album actually had a pretty high charting hit, but it basically kind of made them one-hit wonders. But that's pretty far from the case just because this album is proof that they are not one-hit wonders. It's just the fact that the recognition as far as breaking the mold was just not quite there. But they do have two singles, so I would have to say, like, the examples of this electronic music and the stylishness to how it works so well, I would have to say basically is showcased in Hello Fascination, which is the title track for this album. I didn't say the name of the album, but I'm reviewing Hello Fascination. And the first single was called that, and then the second single was IDGAF, which is an acronym for I Don't Give a Fuck. But both these singles, to kind of talk about them before I go in on them, basically convey like dance club. This album is really like an album that you can pretty much play most of the whole thing at a dance club. Not quite rave music, doesn't quite get that crazy, and is also not really club music where you're trying to drink and that type of stuff. It's really just focused on maybe like sitting at a booth and convoing with some of your friends, or being on the dance floor with a significant other or female, something like that, and really kind of getting quite real on the dance floor. It just really has some great numbers for just having a good time, cutting loose, and being pretty carefree. And I like the concept of how that was working, especially around that time, just because there was not a lot of music doing this. I mean, you look at some of the stuff that was going on, a lot of the club records didn't quite get quite as like carefree and as just playing crazy and off out of the cage and that type of stuff. Like LMFAO was trying to do that around this time. They dropped their Party Rock album around this time, but between LMFAO, Lil Jon, and Breathe Carolina, I'd probably say that these guys were about some of the craziest ones that really did it. But there's definitely some easy moments to dance all night with some woman out at the club. I mean, these are kind of dated songs now, but it was great times as far as that kind of went. And then I would say on top of that, it also has some records that are just, like I said, kind of more in a booth and just kind of conversating, sipping like a beer or something like that, kicking back and just, mingling a little bit. But it's basically the whole album just has the intention of just being out at a dance club. And, I'm kind of repeating what I've been saying, but I really feel like the popularity of just like listening to this all night is really not such a bad thing. It's easy. You might find yourself zoning out just to kind of hear the pretty synchronized melodies, because this is a pretty hooky project. It definitely has some solid hooks and melodies on here. So it's easy to kind of vibe out to. And I would have to say that, it's just a pretty seamless record for the most part. So, but the first single is Hello Fascination, the title track. And this really has like a good example. I mean, this is a pretty catchy song. It makes sense that it's the lead single just because this is like the ear catching song. I mean, they only really had one hit single before this album with their previous record, which I forget what it's called. I'm gonna look that up. It's classy, not classic. So the only single they had before that was just Diamonds. But this immediately gets things started and kind of is actually a pretty quick pace song for a first single. It's actually surprising how uppity it kind of is just right off the bat. It just really breaks down to it, and you're already like mid dancing, mid tempo, mid action kind of going on, as opposed to a little bit more entryway kind of club music. But I like that. I'm glad that it just kicks things off immediately, and you have to kind of find some earlier songs to kind of get you into the moment if you need kind of like a build of getting into that vibe. But I'm glad that it just kicked it off immediately. I really like the second single more. It's probably one of my favorite songs on this album, IDGAF, or I Don't Give a Fuck. Really, this is kind of the more club bop on here, and I would definitely kind of say that, yeah, IDGAF is actually the slower song. This would probably be more of like the entryway single where you just get to the club and start kind of vibing and shaking hands and that type of stuff. I would definitely say, but it's a great club song. This is an easy kind of weekend song just right off the bat. Easy song to kind of unwind to, get started, find your party of people, and kind of kick off the night. I really feel like Hello Fascination is kind of the more dance cut, but I do appreciate IDGAF because it kind of is a dance number, but it's just kind of more of like a, slow dance kind of vibe towards it, just a little bit, but it's quick enough to where it's not a slow song. So let's keep that in mind. They have like, this is kind of more of like a mid-high tempo kind of song. So I appreciate how that kind of went. They're 2 for 2 with the singles. Both of these had the energy carried real well. There isn't really a third single, and that's really too bad because I felt like they kind of took their time. Maybe they thought that they were still about to get larger, so they weren't ready to quite truly cut loose yet. But I definitely felt like this project could have used a third single. They should have went for broke and definitely pushed this project even further. Maybe they had limited budget or something, but it is kind of a disappointment that there wasn't more songs that could have been crested towards the radio because it definitely had the hits. If I had to have picked one, I would have picked Dressed Up to Undress. That really has pretty sing-songy melodies in there and is kind of a more dance number more so than IDGAF, and actually is more, yeah, Dressed Up to Undress is an easy kind of real jivey kind of song, pretty quick tempo and just easy to kind of, like the song says, Dress Up to Undress. It's just a real kind of, it has like the correct vibes of like an appreciative kind of club bop when I was talking about going out for the night when you're actually on the dance floor as opposed to just mingling and that type of stuff. This is definitely one of the better ones to kind of get started and show some dance moves and that type of stuff. So Hello Fascination and Dressed Up to Undress do that. If I had to pick a couple other ones, I would also say Velvet and like I'm trying to think of another one. Velvet and Can I Take You Home kind of have that kind of vibe, also more being on the dance floor type stuff. And I would say like My Obsession and Welcome to Savannah kind of remind me of more mingling songs where it's more about like kind of being at your booth and kind of conversating and getting drinks and that type of stuff where things are kind of slowing down, where I feel like especially My Obsession, this is a song where you can actually hear yourself talk if you're out and about, and normally you can't hear because the music is so loud. But My Obsession is really not that loud a song, so that would strike me as one of the ones that you'd hear when you want to sneak in some conversation and that type of stuff. But it's just good because there is well over 6 or 7 cuts on here that are just intended for the weekend and for specifically a dance club. So especially considering that both the singles have pretty vivacious kind of, this elasticity in what they do, that really tells you just the overall festivity of this project. I mean, it's really, the more I listen to this project, the more I kind of like the likelihood of finding more releases like this, because LMFAO, they kind of turn more pop, and I would also say that like Broken Side kind of became more like crunk. So there really wasn't an overabundance of folks like Breathe Carolina in a lot of ways. They were pretty original, and it's just like they had a pretty good niche for themselves, and it's just like, damn, I mean, honestly, the under promotion where they only have 5 mere albums across like 13 years or 15 years, it's just like, well, what the hell? They probably only have like 6 or 7 or 8 singles to their name. So they definitely needed more. But yeah, to talk about a few songs I didn't enjoy, like I felt like Rescue was kind of a poor attempt at like a pop song. The problem that I had with this project is going to get a high score, but the problem I had with the 4 songs I didn't enjoy is just the fact that in terms they definitely have a strong niche with their electronic kind of punk music that they make, electronic kind of hardcore type stuff. But the problem with it is as far as fleshing out other type altitudes and kind of skills that they have, they really struggled to do that. Like, I feel like Broken Side can kind of do goth music and crunkcore and stuff like that, and moody music, emo music, but these guys, they really can make electronic music very well. But when they tried doing a rock song with Tripped and Fell in Portland, I just really felt like they were kind of like Sum 41 knockoffs or something like that. Little bit of like, some punk band like Alien Ant Farm or Papa Roach, something like that. Sum 41, they just didn't quite do a well enough job. That they only tried it once, but I feel like they had work to do as far as trying to become like more of a rock band as opposed to electronic. And there's just like some moments that like I feel like I'm the type of person to take it personal, had too much going on. I like the production on that song. It could have been better if it wouldn't have had like a dual verse type thing in both the verses. I felt like that they should have just had the screamo verse in the first verse and the clean vocals in like the second verse or something like that. That probably would have worked out a lot better. There's just moments where I felt like the fleshing out of some of this stuff. I mean, they really knocked the electronic and kind of punk electronic out of the park, but they just don't really have. I don't want to say they're a one trick pony, but the rest, their skill set is pretty much that's what they should be doing. Is because the rest of it, I'm talking like I'm going to give this album a low score. I'm really not. So, um, I felt like this meshed real well with like scene stuff and popular scene bands and that type of stuff and emo bands. It really works extremely well. Plus, it's an original vibe because of the electronics. I give that a lot of credit as far as that kind of went. But I do wish that the Jeffree Star song had been on here. There's a 14th song that didn't make the album but is on the Japanese bonus track, and I really wish it would have been on here, or at least on the Spotify version, which is basically Have You Ever Danced. I get the feeling I'm gonna like that song, but I am eventually gonna listen to it. But I'm gonna go ahead and list the 9 songs out of 13 I recommend to you. So Hello Fascination, IDGAF, Dressed Up to Undress, My Obsession, Can I Take You Home, The Dressing Room, Velvet, Welcome to Savannah, and Take Me to Infinity. There's just plenty of moments on here. All of these ones that I listed basically have the electronic vibes really meshed out pretty damn well. And it's really, you can just play all 9 of these songs and go through the variations of the night just with a pretty relative ease. That's just how simplistic it kind of works. Easily social vibes, and if you combine it with other groups, electronic groups like Blood on the Dance Floor, Broken Side, Evanescence, and things like that, it really kind of ups the value of it even further, just because like I said, I keep saying that this was original, but the concept about it is it's this very lonesome genre, just because I feel like they really hit the nail on the head with what they were attempting to do. It was just really like a gaping wide hole. It's like, why haven't more folks done this? But that's kind of the concept, is because they don't really do that much. It's just you really have a slight amount of songs that really showcase the skill set of this, and especially slight amount of singles. But it is good. So me liking 9 out of 13, I'm gonna give this album a 9 out of 10. I really feel like if I had liked just one more song, I would have given it a 10. But 9 out of 13 is basically a lot, and that's quite a bit. I don't expect to like the whole album. It's pretty much not going to happen in most cases. So 9 out of 13, that's a 9 out of 10. The social score, I'm going to give a 6 out of 10, because 2 brilliant singles, but they really didn't push this project, and it just seemed like it kind of vanished way too quickly, and This is the album I felt like with the buildup they had from their 2008 album where they could have really crested and broke even, but they chose to still take a lighter and more kind of simple and kind of formal approach and wait for another album. Now, this kind of worked, but it also kind of made them a one hit wonder because really their only charting song pretty much ever was just on their 2011 album. So I really felt like if they would have dropped like a third and especially a fourth single on this project, they probably would have had an easier time on their third album. I just don't feel like you should wait to your third album to really get past like the second single. You got to pump those out to kind of get more, but they're just really low key. They're kind of like the Millionaires. They're a little bit larger than the Millionaires, a little bit larger than Blood on the Dance Floor, a little bit larger than Broken Side in some cases, but they just did not, have enough like scope to really express that to solidify them as like mainstays in like the genres that they were in. Because it's really too bad because they did pretty outstanding. But yeah, that's what I was saying about the social score. The social score just means how well it plays around your friends and new folks that you hang out with that may not be so much aware of this and how popular it would be with them. And yeah, I would have to say like the future, basically in terms, yeah, the future for Breathe Carolina. They dropped an album back in 2019, but they've been gone kind of since. I guess they've been dropping singles. I'm not really sure, but I don't know a terrible amount about these folks. But I would like to get another album because they only have five. They've been around since 2008, and it's kind of disappointing because I'd like more music for them. Especially, it seems like they're past their heyday. It seemed like their heyday was 2007, 2008, 2009. 10 years ago, 12 years ago, that type of stuff. But I would like to get more out of these folks just to kind of see if they can still have like a second win and that type of stuff. So we'll see. But what it is, this is a pretty outstanding record that pretty much needs to be in your collection.